Welcome, everyone. Today, we're diving into an absolute masterpiece of an explainer. We're taking a massive geographic tour through Imam Ali's end times prophecies, mapping out these incredibly complex ancient texts, region by region. We're focusing specifically on the Eastern Islamic lands to see exactly how these 7th century sources lay out some unbelievable, literally world-shifting geopolitical changes. So let's just get right into it. Okay, quick roadmap for us today. First, Khorasan and the Black Banners. Then, we look at ancient words for future weapons. Third, Ahvaz and the Eastern Commanders. 4, the leader from Hamadan. 5, Taleqan's living treasures. And finally, the ultimate geographic conquest. All right, Section 1, Khorasan and the Black Banners, the starting point. So what's fascinating here is that these narrations don't just give us some vague mystical warning. Not at all. Imam Ali's texts actually lay out a very specific 3-step geographic sequence that signals the kickoff of this final phase. It's like a chain reaction. Step 1, earthquakes hit Khorasan. Step 2, descending calamities in Hamadan. And then Step 3, tremors start shaking Iraq. It's only after this precise triple combination that the Black Banners finally begin their relentless march toward Jerusalem. It is highly, highly structured. And right alongside that movement, the text describes something else entirely, a massive heavenly fright happening specifically in the month of Ramadan. And the language used here is just incredibly evocative. It says this event is so profound that it literally brings the young woman out of her seclusion, awakens the sleeper, and terrifies the awake. Basically, it's a terrifying event that shakes absolutely everyone to their core. No one sleeps through this. Moving on to Section 2. Ancient future weapons. Now this is where it gets absolutely wild. We're looking at a 7th century text that is clearly trying to describe things that, well, they belong to the distant future. We have to kind of put ourselves in their shoes, looking through ancient eyes at highly advanced, completely devastating weaponry. The text talks about arrows the length of mountains carrying a flame that pierces the earth and corrupts the water and the air. I mean, obviously, we aren't talking about bow and arrow warfare from the 600s here, right? And it gets darker. It says this fire leaves absolutely nothing alive, turning victims into ashes scattered by the wind. It's just an uncanny, almost chilling description of catastrophic, modern, or maybe even future weapons of mass destruction. So the big takeaway here is the crazy contrast between the human element and the technological one. On one side, you've got these warriors with this unshakable iron-like discipline. They're described as having hearts harder than iron, so determined they could literally move mountains. But then, on the flip side, you have the total apocalyptic devastation caused by their weapons, leaving ashes blowing in the wind. It's this fascinating, terrifying duality between ancient martial grit and futuristic destructive power. Okay, Section 3, Ahvaz and the Eastern Commanders. Right in the middle of these chaotic campaigns by the antagonistic force known as the Sufyani, who sweeps through Iraq from Basra to Wasit and right into Ahvaz, the narrations push back with some stunning specificity. They explicitly name 2 commanders from Ahvaz, Urwa ibn Matlub and Ibrahim ibn Maruf. These 2 are said to rise up out of the chaos and completely take charge of the region as the Mahdi's top commanders. And this really highlights a massive power shift. The text is crystal clear. Despite all the initial destruction caused by the enemies, forces from the east are going to completely dominate. The narrations even give us a mathematical ratio for this power dynamic. They say for every year the enemies possess control, the eastern forces will possess 2. For every 2 years, they get 4. It's a total overturning of the balance of power, a real game changer. Which brings us to Section 4, the leader from Hamadan. Now, before this new leader arrives on the scene, the texts issue a really chilling warning about a faction from Daylam. They're described starkly as white-faced, black-hearted, the fire of wars. And the text adds this eerie detail, saying their young are actually more concerning than their old. It paints a picture of this incredibly harsh, unyielding group that just causes mass devastation everywhere they go. But to counter all that chaos, Imam Ali provides this incredibly precise, almost photographic checklist of the Hamadani leader who rises up. Ready for this? He's described as having a laugh in his voice, thick eyelashes, a flat neck, parted hair, and he's gautused. Plus, he rides a perfect horse glowing like a full moon. I mean, it is a staggering level of visual detail for a precursor figure written down centuries in advance. The text says he actually bears the prophet's name, clears the clouds of war, and leads what it calls the absolute best of bands. And the profound significance of this whole mountain region gets completely cemented later. Because when the Mahdi officially arrives and sets up his state, the text declares that the people of Hamadan are appointed as his core ministers. So they aren't just frontline foot soldiers, right? They are literally the intellectual and administrative backbone of this entire new era.
All right, let's move into Section 5, Taleqan's Living Treasures.
So whenever we hear the word treasures, we naturally think of buried gold or riches, don't we? Well, the texts completely flip that. They clarify that Taleqan's true wealth isn't precious metal at all. No gold, no silver. Instead, this treasure is actually 12,000 devoted believers, men who possess a profound, true knowledge of God. And it's these exact individuals who emerge as the ultimate supporters in the end of times. And to make it even more real, the narrations don't just give us a vague headcount. They actually name 24 specific individuals from this group: Salih, Jafar, Yahya, Hud, all the way down the line to Ali. Seeing all 24 specific names laid out like this, it just gives so much weight to how meticulously preserved these ancient blueprints really are. It's not some vague mystical prophecy. It is literally a detailed personnel roster written out centuries before the fact. Truly incredible stuff.
And finally, Section 6, the ultimate geographic conquest.
If we follow the narrations exactly, we can track the geographic sweep of these final campaigns perfectly. It's a literal step-by-step march. It starts out east in Khorasan and Al-Tabriz, then sweeps down to completely restructure Kufa, from there pushing out to conquer Constantinople, then all the way to China, before finally circling back around to conquer those harsh mountains of Daylam. What we're looking at is a total, sweeping, global reorganization. And then we get this astonishing final detail. The text claims that during the 7-year reign of peace, the very physics of time itself will change. I'm not kidding. The narrations state that the celestial sphere will literally slow down, stretching a single year to the length of 10 of our normal years. And when the text anticipates people questioning how that's possible, it points out that, hey, God split the moon and stretched the sun for previous prophets, right? It's showing us that the fundamental physical laws will bend to divine will in this new era. Which brings us to a really brilliant final thought to wrap up today. We've just traced a meticulously structured progression, from Khorasan to Daylam, decoded terrifying future weapons, and even looked at exact named personnel rosters. So if the geography of the past holds such an incredibly complex map of our future, down to the slowing of time itself, you have to wonder, what other ancient blueprints are out there, hiding in plain sight, just waiting to be decoded? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and definitely keep questioning the blueprints of the past.